We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's April 19th here in Seoul. I'm Xin and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Kdrama.
Happy Friday, everyone!
Happy Friday, and Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. As we're seeing the Korean won weaken in value against the dollar, many Koreans are reconsidering whether to go for their summer vacation. Southeast Asian countries are usually popular destinations for many Korean travelers because of the relatively cheap local food prices. But because these countries use the dollar as one of their main currencies, many Korean tourists have instead turned to Japan. Airlines are preparing in advance for this trend and have reportedly expanded discount events in the number of flights to Japanese cities. Photos of K-pop boy group BTS member V wearing a counterterrorism unit uniform were released on Wednesday. The images show V wearing a black special duty team uniform. Comments flooded on the Facebook page where the photos were uploaded, complimenting the K-pop artist's looks. V enlisted in the military last December to fulfill his mandatory service. He has since been accepted to join the military police during boot camp training. And a lawmaker-elect of the Minor Reform Party stood by the hosting of an adult festival showcasing porn stars in the capital's Seoul. The festival had been banned in Seoul and cities across Gyeonggi-do province last week as local governments raised concerns that the event could distort the public's perception of sex. But lawmaker Chon Ha-ram wrote on his Facebook page on Wednesday that somewhere along the line our society began applying strange standards where the basic instincts of women are widely recognized as rightful, while men's instincts are stigmatized as criminal and repulsive. Chun demanded that Seoul metropolitan government reconsiders its ban of the festival, dubbed 2024 KTX The Fashion. He said the ban could be viewed as gender discrimination. He also cited how the city had allowed past adult shows and musicals aimed at women to be held across Seoul, and the festival's organizer originally planned to hold a fashion show, fan meetup, and dance performance with several Japanese porn actors. Now, here in the studio, this story is a buzz at the moment. We're seeing local governments banning the festival as a whole. Venues are not accepting the organizer, big play Joker, to coming in. But what are your thoughts?
Well, to be honest with you, it really is actually a bigger thing than what this is, because obviously we know, and living in Korea for so long, that sex education is not being taught very well in schools. And that's where it should really start. And then we can have talks like this a little bit later. As far as when it comes to, you know, gender discrimination, that's also something that needs to be taught well in schools before we get to this point. So before we even go to festivals, before we even go to these fashion shows, I think we need to look at this from a education point of view rather than an actual show at the moment.
I do agree. I think the 2024 KXF, the fashion show, is just the start of many discussions. I don't think we should be talking about whether it should be held or not. I think the bigger issue is there gender discrimination? Are we seeing a polarization as to women in Korean society versus men are more free and vocal about talking about their sex drive or whatever it has to do with sex? But in regards to this issue itself, what are your thoughts?
I mean, there's just so much to go on here.
So many different angles here.
I'm glad that Walter kind of opened the gate for us to really talk about this issue in a little bit more depth. I mean, first of all, the fact that they're bringing in Japanese porn stars to begin with already, I think, sort of contaminates the concept of it being a fashion festival. But on top of that, the more important issue is, as Walter and I mentioned, I think it has to do with the comment about it being gender discrimination.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, not knowing the details of the content itself. If it really is an adult material content festival, then it isn't about gender discrimination, but about the legitimacy of the festival itself. I mean, the porn itself is not supposed to promote any sexual equal rights to begin with. So the fact that whether this festival is being held or not has nothing to do, again, I think has to do with gender equality, first of all. And on top of that, I think it's really important to consider the effect that this festival could have in terms of the city and the people that are coming into it. I mean, there are so many repercussions that could happen, and especially in Korea, isn't adult material illegal?
It is.
To begin with? And they're bringing in an actor from overseas. So there's just so much to go on here, and I don't know why the politician brought up the issue of gender discrimination into an issue that seems to have a lot of problems to begin with.
Just to play devil's advocate here, the lawmaker-elect did say that he couldn't understand how local governments would pin down the holding of the festival itself to be catering to the needs of only men, and also possibly soaring up sex crimes. So a lot of local governments cited that this festival would distort the perception of sex and actually motivate or encourage men to actually go on and try different sex crimes after looking at it. But then again, that has no logic there. And I do think that those comments could have shed light as to how we are viewing men when it comes to that concept. Now, there's so many more discussions to come forth, so hopefully we can have a deeper discussion on related matters. But in the meantime, let's now shift gears to our main discussion topic of the day. Tomorrow is Disabled Persons Day. April 20th has been designated to abolish any type of discrimination against people with disabilities. And the reason this springtime date has been chosen specifically is because the day aims to ensure the blossoming of a society that accepts and understands people who are physically or mentally disabled. Also, just as we see many things come to life in this month, April was designated to encourage people with disabilities to be motivated to start a fresh new chapter in their lives. And to mark Disabled Persons Day, NewsGen is going to share just how far Korean society has come to accept people with disabilities, and this can be seen through how K-dramas or cultural content deals with this topic. So Cheska, why don't you walk us through on that front first?
Yes, and if you remember, we were here exactly last year.
We were.
Not you, Walter, but
With Chi, yes.
I was here in spirit.
I know,
Yes.
I know. You were very supportive, by the way. So I'm very glad to be back here again to celebrate. And each country actually has a different date for Disabled Persons Day. And it was established to promote understanding of the disabled and encourage them to rehabilitate and provide opportunities for welfare promotion. You know, as Walter will explain more, there has been a much more mainstream media that deals with this topic. And especially the government also produces content related to disabled people and even create like dramas and K-drama series related to it. So we're definitely seeing a lot more content out there, and there has been some movies and K-dramas that came out that Walter will share more of us.
Yeah, so one of the biggest K-dramas that has a disabled main character to come out of South Korea was 이상은 변호사 Woo or Extraordinary Attorney Woo. If you haven't seen it, it is about a lawyer who has autism and works for one of the biggest law firms in the country. Now, it was one of the most popular, if not the most popular drama of 2022. Now, there was also a K-drama called 우리의 Blues or Our Blues, which features actors with developmental disabilities as well. Another K-content was Twinkling Watermelon, which shows the interesting story of a CODA boy. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what CODA is, C-O-D-A, it is actually short for Child of Deaf Adult. So that means that the child has either one or two deaf parents, and they show you obviously the struggles of what a CODA child can go through. That's just to name a few, because there have been a lot of dramas, even in the past as well, bringing up these issues of mental illness as well as disabilities, etc.
And as a viewer myself, I was quite happy to see that more of these dramas are becoming a little bit more accurate. Before, I do think they were dealing with stereotypes, which just shows that the perception of society has definitely changed. And I think this was facilitated thanks to new media content as well. We're also seeing a lot more YouTubers with disabilities share their own stories here in Korea. So Cheska, why don't you walk through some of their testimonies and the content that you've seen?
Yeah, I think mainstream definitely played a part in opening the gate, but I also would like to say this is one of the positive cycles of the new media, which is the social media allowing us to see the parts of the world that we would not get to see otherwise. And because they're not scripted, hopefully, and they're not like drama or movies, they're actually real things that are happening to these people. And many active MZ disabled YouTubers share very honest and sometimes very positive testimonials of their lives. And personally, I find it to be not only informative, but also beautiful because it shows resilience and hope of life in many ways. And they also, which I think is very important, highlight certain aspects of their lives that we need to know in terms of unfair treatment or also discrimination. Now, there are some difficulties of navigating a life that is obviously has been created and centered around non-disabled people, such as, you know, they get refused at restaurants.
Exactly.
You know, they get bullied in school, or they have difficulty commuting because of their wheelchairs or their disabilities. And I don't know if you have walked in South Korea, there are many barriers. So it's really difficult for them to navigate, and sometimes people don't know how to react when they see a disabled person. And these YouTubers actually showcase these real testimonials And they really shine light on issues that are really important for us to know. Yeah.
It's just much more raw material, I think, and you can see for in reality what it's like to live as a disabled person here in Korea. And I think that's the biggest advantage of seeing more YouTubers with disabilities come about. Then have you guys ever come across such content? And if you have seen them, what did you think about it?
You know, I watched a couple of these, and one of the ones that I like is, his name is One Shot Hansol, and he's a blind person, and he's the most positive YouTuber that I can ever think about. And the other one is Miracle, and he's a young MZ세대, very positive also, but he actually became disabled later in his life. So he's going through the process of coping with it. And I watched this testimonial from the very beginning and how he has built influence to use this platform to share voices and families who are actually going through something similar or things that we not know about. And one of the things that really helped me understand is not just people who have disabilities, but young parents who are raising children with disabilities and what they go through and how sometimes it isn't always hopeful and what they need to deal with. And these have really, really opened my eyes to a lot of the things that are going on in the world. Yeah.
I see. What about you, Walter?
Yeah, I actually see the short form videos actually more than the YouTube videos with people with disabilities. There are constant informative videos that answer questions about. There's a lot of people who are just honestly curious. Able-bodied people are curious about what's it like living with a certain disability, where a lot of people are very happy to share what struggles they might go through, or instead of pitying them, which is what we used to do in the past, be more just accepting to the whole situation. It's just really great to see this sort of content because it actually helps people out and understand more and put everyone on the same level, which they should have been a long time ago. But yes, I do often see these on TikTok and Instagram.
I would like to expand on the concept that you just mentioned before. In the past, I do believe that much of the content that we saw was sort of pitying people with disabilities. But compared to the past, I do think that the way producers or content creators are sharing their stories have changed. And this has to do with how our generation is accepting disabled people. So do you think that the change in types of content and the way they're illustrating their stories really reflects our generation's perspective towards people with disabilities?
I think that's a really interesting question. And I think even back then, when people had this mindset of sympathy or pitying, I think the intention was very positive. However, I don't think they knew how to navigate the concept without knowing it too much. Hopefully, with the advent of the new media and the exposure of these raw testimonials and even the positive sides of these disabled people, I think the content producers and writers have really took an extra step in making them the protagonist of the story, being more proactive and leading the storyline. I mean, we saw it in the extraordinary lawyer Woo Young-woo, right? Like she actually navigates the world and leads her life even with her disability. And I must admit, we still have a long way to go in terms of really sort of creating these environment or content that sort of centers around disabled people. However, as we mentioned, I think new media and our generation is really putting the story out there.
Exactly. And I think in the past, we stood at understanding that there's a difference and not trying to change from there.
Right.
But now I think we're acknowledging that there's a difference. Obviously, there are physical or mental disabilities that may differ from what we consider to be norm. But now we've taken one step further to understand and try to navigate how we can live together. And Walter, could you agree with that statement based on Kcontent with dealing with people with disabilities, and they've come so far? Do you think societal perspectives have changed since?
I definitely think so, and you both have actually said exactly what I need to say, but I will repeat it. Like, I think creating dramas, these sort of contents, YouTube contents, any form of content that gets out there in the public is great for the community and will give a better understanding to those people who are not familiar with it, who are in some ways maybe a little too shy to ask the person themselves. Like maybe they were curious as to, the problems that they deal with, and they are just, as I said, too shy to ask. And therefore, creating these sort of contents, creating these sort of dramas is able to help people open up. As long as the dramas take from real situations and they don't try to dramatize it when it's in reality, there is it can be a lot worse, and it can not be a lot worse. It just depends on the drama itself. Like we said, we're taught to pity people back in the day, especially when I was in high school. It was more of a, sadly, this is what has happened to this person. However, we shouldn't think like that. We shouldn't pity them. We should be respectful of who they are, and that's something that I think that we're doing here in Korea. And there's a long way to go, like Jessica said, there is a long way to go, but we are making positive moves in the right direction.
And I think our generation is leading that because our generation is taught to understand differences. Now, much has changed to the point where we will be seeing a monumental moment in K-pop history tomorrow. To find out what I'm talking about, stay tuned. We have a special interview prepared in light of Disabled Persons Day. Tomorrow, we're going to turn a page in K-pop history. The country's first ever act with hearing impairments will debut. Take a look at the screen to find out who they are.
Attention! We are Big Ocean! Hi, I'm Hyunjin.
Hi, I'm Jisoo. And I'm Chanan.
We are K-pop idol group debuting tomorrow. It's 20 April.
Yeah.
It is very special because it's Disabled People's Day.
And all the members of our group have hearing impairment, so we are very unique and special stories.
We trained for half an year for this group, and I was trained almost 4 years in our entertainment company. I was a YouTuber in the past, and one day my CEO asked me, "Would you like to become an idol group?" I was very surprised to hear this, but come to think of it, it was very cool. And suddenly all dream was brought back. When I was young, I always dreamed of becoming an idol. There was a show made by our company. Jisoo visited there and was casted on spot.
I applied for the official audition and I was casted.
Of course, the training was not easy. All the members had different difficulties in listening to music. It was hard to listen to the beat, and I couldn't understand grooves or bounces. Our company made some vibration and flashlight metronome. We could feel the beat in other ways. Also, we used AI voice conversion technology.
Three of us all sing and rap, but the sound wasn't good enough for the music album.
So AI deep learned our voice and made our song better.
There are so many fans already, especially from America and Europe.
We live broadcasted on social media platform for a month before debuting, and we shared almost every daily lives of our preparation. We ate meal in front of camera, we hit the gym, practiced dancing, and even showed us taking photo shoots as a model. Now there are many people who can relate to our story. They say they don't care about the disability, and some say they have disability too, and it encourages them too. We are so welcomed so far, but before being an idol, there were many social prejudices we experienced. For example, low expectations, even teachers were always satisfied with our work, regardless we were good or bad. Many didn't expect us to be perfect or go beyond. On the other hand, some even discourages us by saying, "You won't be able to make it." Both of these stances toward us hurt us much. I also wanted to dream big and be ambitious.
Nowadays, generally people are nice and gentle, but sometimes I feel there are still some lines between people.
I hope many fans can enjoy our music and performances and look into our eyes and see what is inside us. Then I think the gap between the disabled and non-disabled will be narrowed down soon. Thank you for listening. We were Big Ocean.
Bye!
That was Big Ocean, set to debut tomorrow on Disabled Persons Day, which is also very symbolic given the fact that, as they mentioned, a lot of people doubted whether this could happen or not. But I do think this is the right step in the right direction, given that our generation is welcoming this type of change. We want to see people break through their boundaries, break through all these barriers. Now, I hear the country has many different events and cultural activities lined up to mark Disabled Persons Day, but I also wanted to find out whether different parts of the world has similar days like Disabled Persons Day in their respective countries, which is exactly why we asked our viewers to share different events or ways that they commemorate Disabled Persons Day in their own countries. So if you could take a look at the screen, you can find out what 3 of our viewers had to share in regards to this question. Let's start with Leon. Leon said, a major event held in Singapore to celebrate International Day of Persons with Disabilities is called the Enabling Lives Festival. The festival aims to celebrate inclusion and abilities of persons with disabilities. Tasmia says for disabled people, regardless of age, we have seasonal sports, art contests, and events to make them feel comforted. Benny says in the Philippines, we have a day for disabled persons every December 3rd, and every 3rd week of July, we have a week dedicated for the National Disability Prevention and Rehabilitation Week. Now, ending off, I do think that the whole world is on the same board as to better incorporating and including disabled people into our society. What type of changes would you like to see here in Korea, though?
I think the first and foremost, it's representation. I think as initiating changes or thinking about what could actually help disabled people it can be very limited coming from a non-disabled perspective. So I think increase in representation in Congress to institute laws and infrastructure, I think is pretty much the start. Yeah.
As we're seeing through media content, we're seeing a lot more representation there. Now, what about you, Walter?
I have to agree with Cheska there, and especially put a lot of emphasis on infrastructure, because as we talked about before, Seoul isn't the most disabled friendly area, so there does need to be a lot of improvements in the infrastructure.
And hopefully with K-pop artist Big Ocean debuting tomorrow, we will see more representation. We'll hear more about their stories, and as you mentioned, shedding light as to how it's still not that barrier-free for disabled people to live in Korea. Hopefully, we'll see some positive changes soon. Now, in the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Cheska Dainong.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a great Disabled Persons Day tomorrow, and we'll see you next week. We are News Generation.